On March 2nd of 2018, the Modern Thirst staff, along with friends from Sips Suds and Smokes and the Bourbon Guys, met for a tour of one of my favorite distilleries, Heaven Hill's Bernheim plant in West Louisville, Kentucky. I've been a fan of Heaven Hill for some time, and yet I'd never actually seen where it was made. Sure, I've toured the warehouses and Heritage Center in Bardstown, but remember that the actual distillery in Bardstown burned to the ground in 1996. For the next 3 years, Heaven Hill sold whiskey they hadn't lost in the fire and sourced their new make from Brown-Forman and Jim Beam. The site of the distillery was first developed in 1881, but the Bernheim Distilling Company, makers of I.W. Harper and Old Charter, among other labels, moved there in 1897 and rebuilt the site. In 1909, the Bernheim Distilling Company was sold to the United American Company, only to see the distillery destroyed by fire 2 years later. It was rebuilt in 1911 at nearly triple the original capacity and continued to operate during Prohibition, making medicinal whiskey. In 1937, the distillery was sold to Schenley Distillers, and in 1987, that was again sold to United Distillers, who in turn closed the Bernheim facility and all its other American whiskey distilleries in 1991. In 1999, the then dormant distillery was sold to Heaven Hill, who began extensive renovations and began using the facility to produce its many labels. Heaven Hill also acquired the rights to the Old Fitzgerald label in the same transaction. In 2017, Heaven Hill completed a massive $25 million expansion that brought total capacity to 400,000 barrels per year. That's an increase in distilling capacity by a third, making it the largest bourbon distillery in the world outside of the Jack Daniel's distillery in Tennessee. And yes, legally, Jack Daniel's is bourbon, though they choose not to call it that. This expansion added 4 new fermenters, a third 66-inch column still, and a new thumper, among other additions. While aging, bottling, and all the other work that goes into making the whiskeys still occurs for the most part in Bardstown, the Bernheim facility must support it all. Heaven Hill currently has over 1.3 million barrels of bourbon aging in Kentucky, making up about a quarter of the world's total bourbon supply, and that's frankly astonishing. And visiting the plant drives that point home. Before we began our tour, our host, Josh Hafer of Heaven Hill, told us to expect to see the largest fermenters we will ever lay eyes on. We laughed. Most of us have seen our share of distilleries, and if you've ever seen one, you've seen them all, right? Wrong. So very wrong. Each fermenter is 124,000 gallons, with the lone exception being a strange outlier of 123,800 gallons. And there are 17 of them. 17. If you fell in one, they simply might never find you. They're the largest fermenters I've ever seen, and it takes 6 full runs of the stills to fill one fermenter. And the stills themselves are insane, with 2 66-inch columns in one room and a third just a few feet away through one door. These things are unbelievable. Outside, there's some old brick warehouses just across the street that are part of the facility. They're mostly used for aging non-bourbon whiskey, but they stand as a reminder of the closeness of bourbon distilleries in the Shively neighborhood of Louisville, as Brown-Forman's own distillery is about a short 7-iron away. And this isn't a picturesque distillery, like many people no doubt picture when they envision a trip to the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, made for tours and weddings. This is a factory. It's an urban bourbon factory. There are patched bullet holes on one of the older outside fermenters. There's barbed wire around most of the property, and it's not open for public tours. There's no fence line drive or old stone entrance. It exists to produce, and produce it does. If you're looking to tour Heaven Hill facilities, there are 2 great nearby options. The Evan Williams Bourbon Experience on Main Street in downtown Louisville is a great condensed bourbon tour with a working still and fully stocked gift shop. And the Bourbon Heritage Center in Bardstown, Kentucky is less than an hour away and provides the scenic rickhouses, the visitor center, the gift shop, and more that tourists are probably looking for. In the meantime, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy some of the photos from our visit. As always, check us out at ModernThirst.com for hundreds of whiskey reviews and all the latest whiskey news. Please consider supporting us at www.patreon.com/ModernThirst. Thanks again, and cheers.